Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to today's Kyle Seraphin Show for Tuesday, August the 12th. I appreciate you being with us. For those of you who joined me for the InfoWars stuff yesterday, that was kind of fun. Got to hang out. Actually, the best reason to go down to do InfoWars is not to do the show or not to communicate with an audience. It's because after the fact and actually in between the various shows, there's a decent chance that I'll be hanging out with Chase and I'll be hanging out with Alex, and we get to do Alex Jones impressions for Alex Jones. So if you guys missed those yesterday, they're on the X stream. They're out on Rumble. Go ahead and check out InfoWars. I think you'll have fun with it. The Owen show I thought was more fun. The War Room, we had a little bit of fun. We talked about all kinds of silly stuff like why you should carry a gun. We'll talk a little bit more about that today. I think that's something that's relevant to all Americans that live in America. And that means I'm looking at you folks that live in these blue states, that are living in these cities that are overrun by crime and ridiculousness. And Washington, D.C. I got into a little Twitter thing this morning already with Ken Delaney, and you guys know who Ken is. And I just asked him, like, he was making the argument that he raises children in Washington, D.C., and it's not that bad. It's like, what the hell are you talking about, dude? Why are you raising children in not America? Why don't you move to America? You just don't have anything to compare it to. This is one of the problems that I think leftists have, is they don't know anything better. And then you move them somewhere and you take them to, like, I don't know, Wyoming. Go to Cody, Wyoming. You know? Go to anywhere go to Great Falls, Montana. Go step out into the middle of nowhere. You'll realize what America looks like. Pick a small town anywhere in Oklahoma or Texas. Go to Comfort, Texas. And then you'll be like, oh, Washington, D.C. is not America. It actually has nothing to do with what most people experience as America. And then it starts making you wonder, like, why in the hell should these people be writing our laws? We've got some of that. We've got a little bit about Pete Hegseth. He's getting called out because he doesn't think, or at least he's supporting people who don't think that women should have the right to vote. Spoiler alert, you know what side I'm going to come down on here. I'm not trying to insult you, ladies. I'm just trying to say we could probably do this better. I've got some good examples of that. What else? CDC got shot up. Trump's going to take over D.C. We'll talk more about that. Let's have a little bit of fun today. I think we're going to get into a bunch of things. One of the things that we generally say here, the Kyle Seraphin Show, is that you can't trust the government. You can't trust your technology companies. You can't even trust that little damn spyware device that lives inside your pocket most days. I'm going to put mine away right now. That's what's going to happen. And let's do a little plug for the folks over at Silent. That's the E3 Everyday Faraday backpack that you see on the screen. I've got one of those. It's freaking awesome. It is my favorite backpack. It has the coolest chest buckle. I don't know how else to explain it. It snaps in magnetically, and I absolutely love it. We got to face it. The spyware thing that you carry around your pocket, your phone, is a tracking device. So government agencies and big tech and corporate data brokers, even cyber criminals, they all want a piece of your digital footprint. They don't ask. They just take it. Sometimes you sign it away in a terms of service agreement, and that's why Silent exists. slnt.com/Kyle. That's where you guys go and check out the products they have. Make sure you're using my name at checkout for 15% off. Silent makes Faraday gear. They block all incoming wireless signals and outgoing wireless signals. That includes cellular, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, RFID, new near-field communication. All of these things are ways that your phone lets other people know where you're at in real time. Do you want that? Probably not. When I was in the government, we talked about a thing called ubiquitous technical surveillance, or UTS. It's the thing that surveillance teams and special operations folks around the world use to find people. And they also use Faraday stuff, like the stuff from Silent. In fact, some military units are actually using them right now. DEA has some contracts with Silent. That's what they use to block their signals, avoid surveillance, secure their comms, whatever the mission requires. Check it out, slnt.com/KYLE. You guys know I'm a gear guy, so when it comes down to protecting your family and your freedom and eliminating your digital footprint when you choose to, all you got to do is drop your phone in a Faraday sleeve from Silent, and you jump off the grid, and you are completely silent, invisible to the outside world. Check them out. Link in the show description. Let's get into today's program with that thought in mind. A lack of trust for the authorities and the federal government. That's a general theme here. We do have a kind of a unique group of folks that enjoy our program, and I want to put you guys on the screen right now. If you guys have never joined us for a live show, I'm going to make a couple of plugs early on, which I don't normally do. Our show streams on Rumble, it streams on X, and it streams on YouTube. If you ever want to watch it live, that means you're going to not get any canned ads. You're going to get, like a flow through of the program. And then you also get the advantage of getting folks telling you their strange ideas, like Mr. Dean SNJ keeps his phone in the microwave, allegedly. That is kind of a Faraday thing. Don't turn on the microwave. You'll get to see that lightning show, and then you won't have a phone anymore. But, we've got an interesting audience, and I'm just going to say that. And if you guys want to make sure you support the program, I'll tell you right up front, you can subscribe to any of those channels. You can also find us over on Spotify and Apple and iHeartRadio and all those kind of places. If you notify and like the videos, we appreciate all those things as well. And if you're just listening to it, no big deal. We appreciate you guys as well on KyleSerafinshow.com. That's the easiest way to share it with a friend. Rumble, X, YouTube. You can also jump on Locals. I'm going to start trying to put some more kind of updates and thoughts out there on the Locals channel, which is just KyleSerafin.com. And that's the easiest place. If you ever want to refer to any of the articles that I pull up during the day, which I pull up a lot of articles, I like to read just little pieces of them that make sense to me. If you want to read the entire context, you can do that by going to KyleSerafin.com. You'll find the video of the day, the podcast of the day, and then there's like a list of links below it. So something to do. Let's go back in time a little bit, shall we, folks? This is kind of a retrospective. I've been going back in time because I can't help realize that what happened in 2020 and the way that the last year of Trump 1.0 went down, it actually is determining a lot of what Trump 2.0 does and the sort of same challenges. Now, if you step back in time, and it's worth doing that, you're going to remember that the issues of the day included a complete shutdown of our economy, of our society, that people accepted a absolutely bizarre new normal of face masks, which would never have occurred previously. We accepted unprecedented government overreach from the federal government specifically, and it leaning aggressively on our local governments. And the local governments immediately rolled over, and they all went for it, right? We're having this debate right now on whether or not you should federalize the property in Washington, D.C. There's this concept called D.C. Home Rule, which means that the District of Columbia, which is a federal district, is allowed to operate its own sort of local government, and it sort of pretends like it's its own state and or city, even though it has to directly go to Congress to get any funding for anything. So they have a mayor, they have a city council, they have all these atrocious and stupid laws, they have, cameras that'll take a picture of your license plate when you drive through certain areas and automatically ticket you. This was a big pain in the ass when we used to work surveillance down there. And all this stuff is an interesting discussion. It's a reminder that the federal government doesn't do anything very well. And especially when you start getting down to the local scale. This is why they should probably cede most of DC that are not the federal buildings back to Maryland. I think this is the only answer. I don't think that having federal quote unquote troops, putting National Guardsmen, or having the DOJ take over the DC Metro PD, none of this stuff seems like a good idea. But to claim that this could never happen and this is unprecedented and Donald Trump is a totally evil dictator because he wants to go and grab Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. sucks. It is a miserable place to go. And people who live there and think it's nice have no frame of reference. We're going to talk about Joe Biden, who swore in an unprecedented inauguration, January 20th of 2021. This was 15 days or 14 days after January 6th. And in the wake of that horrifically bad couple hours that took place, where a few people, literally a few people, could be measured in dozens, and it wouldn't be an inappropriate number. Was it like 5 or 6 dozen people were actually physically violent? Then you had a complete lockdown and a National Guard rollout across Washington, D.C. that was unlike anything that I'd seen in the 5 years prior. I had actually been in D.C. for the inauguration of Donald Trump, and I had that to compare with. I was on the ground when Donald Trump was inaugurated. I was walking around through the crowd. I saw what those riots looked like. And then I saw the insanity and the police barricades and the checkpoints that existed for weeks prior to and after the inauguration in 2021. And when that happened, my wife and I made a real quick decision. Like, this is terrifying shit. We are not sticking around here. I've got to go. I am taking my family and I am moving. And I never went back to work in DC after that. And I wouldn't want to go back there for anything, having known how quickly they were cool with rolling out anti-scale fencing, throwing up a bunch of people in multicam pajamas, and either giving them weapons or not, and just basically checking IDs just so you could make it home or go to the office where you worked. All of that was crazy. And that was in our nation's capital. So there is something to say about the way that that city is willing to accept tyranny. And it hasn't been safe for a really, really long time. So to act like what Donald Trump is doing is out of the blue is strange. Let me additionally just say this before we get into the deepness of the 2021 sort of parallels and why we're still adjudicating all of this stuff between COVID tyranny and the Biden administration's sort of failed legacy. Can we talk real quickly? It blows my mind. I cannot fathom that people just accepted this and rolled straight over. Let me give you a concept of how bad it is. When I used to work in the emergency room, when I used to work on an ambulance, I had this idea about what emergencies are. And Washington, D.C. is not having an emergency right now. An emergency, this is Kyle Serafin's opinion, so take it for what it's worth. An emergency is an acute condition. Something just happened, and now we have to act immediately with there's an imminent danger of death or injury or whatever. That's not what we see in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is it's not an acute, it's a chronic condition. It's the equivalent of we used to get phone calls that we'd get a 600-pound man. Yeah, I had a 600-pound patient that was living down south of Austin, and we'd go pick the guy up. And like every day of his life was like 7 out of 10 crappy. He was miserable. He had like dragon toes. He was hugely fat. He had a person that would like lift him up just to get out of bed. He could actually walk, which was incredible and scary. But, if every day was like, how bad is it today? It's a 7 out of 10. When it was an 8 out of 10, he'd call 911. And so then we would show up. So I don't feel good about saying that these chronic conditions, these like permanently garbage cities are living through an emergency right now, because they're not. They're living in the natural outgrowth of chronic stupidity and bad idea theater. Here's how I know it's been bad for a long time in DC. This is Joe Biden. This guy became president against all odds, and maybe against even like what the voters said, if you believe that there are actually problems with the election machines. Remember, we used to not be able to talk about that. You'd get banned from social medias for having a discussion about, is this guy really the person they elected? And he was a blowhard, self-important narcissist back then. This is 1992 Joe Biden, long before he became president, talking about how safe DC is.
Driving home, my staff who lives here in the Hill reminded me, don't stop at a stoplight until I'm out of town. If I see a red light late at night, since there's very little traffic, slow up at the other block so I never come to a full stop except in the middle of the block because of carjackings. Stopping at a light, people standing at a corner, walking up with a gun.
Do you know who else used to tell me about don't slow down or stop when you're at a red light? My friends who are from Puerto Rico that live in San Juan, that grew up there, that were federal agents. They were like, yeah, after it gets dark, we don't stop at red lights. We don't stop at stop signs. That's where the gangs hide in the dark, and then they jump out and they carjack you. If you come to a complete stop, then you are going to have people surround your car and pull you out, maybe kill you, but take all your stuff for sure. You don't stop. You just go. That's Joe Biden, 1992, talking about America, or I would argue not America. I'm going to read this article here. This comes from January 20th of 2021, and it's entitled, Joe Biden Takes Oath of Office with Troops on Guard and Towering Challenges Ahead. For anyone that is crying about Donald Trump federalizing or bringing in National Guard troops, spare me, because I lived through 2021 and so did you. And if we have a memory that is longer than 4.5 years, we can exactly recall this moment where a bunch of dudes were standing on the steps of the Capitol to keep people away so that he could be sworn in secrecy, essentially making sure that only a friendly crowd gathered. That's not the same thing they did for Donald Trump. I'm going to read you some of this. Also, kind of a prescient move on Donald Trump's part to not be there at that swearing in. And people were like, oh, it's unprecedented. Literally, in this article, they're talking about this. Joe Biden is set to become the 46th president of the United States at noon, when he will take the oath of office while standing on the same platform where insurrectionists swarmed just 2 weeks ago as they sought to prevent Congress from certifying Biden's victory. That violent mob of rioters damaged the U.S. Capitol, attacked police officers, and sparked security concerns ahead of Wednesday's transition of presidential power. By the way, that went off without a hitch. Nobody showed up. How interesting. But the traditional outdoor ceremony is slated to go on, albeit with much more limited audience than usual due to the coronavirus pandemic and security fears. Remember, these people were more than happy to trade the idea of American liberty and the fact that we live in this country where freedom is expensive and potentially dangerous. Nope, they sided for safety and tyranny. Literally, that was their jam. Instead of looking out over a sea of supporters, which may not exist, the former vice president and longtime senator from Delaware will be speaking before members of Congress seated in socially distanced chairs and a massive force of National Guards members, a display of flags stretching to the Washington Monument representing all the victims who fell to COVID-19 and cannot be there in person. Sure, that's what went on. Mike Pence will be in attendance, but for the first time since 1869, the departing president will not watch his successor take the oath. Donald Trump and wife Melania left the White House hours ahead of Biden's swearing in, flying out on Marine One past the Capitol as it ferried him home to Florida. Now, what did they do about this? That might have been a smart move because you were surrounded by National Guard troops who were going to be taking over a new oath of allegiance to the person who's the commander-in-chief. And you'll remember, about 2 years later, 18 months later, they decided to go into that man's house and take all of his stuff and go rifling through it. Here's another article from the day. The National Guard had a quiet day in D.C., standing post against threats that they helped to prevent. If you're a listener to this program, you know that the word threats is the most dangerous word that the federal government totes, that it carries it out and says, these are potential fears that you could have, and we would like you to have them. Will you please be aware of these threats? And by the way, in order to protect you against these unmaterialized dangers that may or may not exist, but we do have reporting that indicates they do, we're going to come after you with everything we have. Because actually, you might be part of the threat. Oh, you like to own a gun? Oh, you believe that the Second Amendment is an absolute right? Oh, you think that you should have a free exercise of your religion? Despite this global pandemic? Like, all of those things are going to make you the threat. And then they went forward and they carried it out. And they created a new variety of threats, a new variety of national security, domestic terrorism threats under 266 Oscar. That was the FBI's little code for it, which was anti-government, anti-authority, violent extremists. Never mind that you don't need to be anti-authority, and never mind that you don't have to be explicitly anti-government of all kinds. You might just not like our government. And never mind that you don't actually have to be violent or extreme in your thoughts. You might just be like a regular American. You might just think that you actually have a Bill of Rights and that it actually means something. Isn't that crazy? And if that's the case, then you too could be declared an enemy of the state. I've got a lawsuit that's coming up to mediation on August the 29th. I'm going to be going down to Houston. If it's a weekday, I'll probably be missing the show. I'll roll down there. And we're going to be discussing whether or not it's appropriate that the FBI not give us any discovery about the comms that were going on in the background. And all of this is relevant to what happened last week, amazingly enough, because so much of this comes from the original sin of the Biden administration needed a cover-up for their disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan, right? You'll remember that they pulled troops out, had 13 service members killed in an unprecedentedly stupid move tactically. And then they thought, well, what if we just start new headlines? It's all the same. I feel the same way about Donald Trump talking about federalizing Washington, D.C., because they have a PR nightmare on their hands. It's not nearly as bad or dangerous. It's the fact that they created this false sort of hope that they were going to give out Epstein files. I've actually got the press release sitting up here on my desk, and it said, it's on my desk. It's from February 27th of 2025. That's 23 weeks ago. Pam Bondi released Phase 1 of the declassified Epstein files. You recall? Phase 1 of 1, it turned out, because they never gave it again. And the left is not going to let them forget, and the left owns the bulk of the media that is out there, so they're going to keep playing with it. So the Trump administration's got to do something. They're going to change the narrative. The Biden administration did the same thing in the first year. They had an absolutely disastrous thing. The difference between the Epstein files not being released and what happened in Afghanistan is that 13 service members died and the United States imported 100,000 potential terrorists into this country, none of whom were vetted properly. That's a big deal. That seems really, really problematic, doesn't it? So all of this stuff, as I keep telling you, is theater. I mean it. Like, you can see the theater in real time. We can all watch it happen. And you go, oh, these people are full of it. Let me give you a little example, because I'm going to show you Donald Trump talking through both sides of his mouth in like a period of a short number of days. It's not good. They could do better. They could also fix the Epstein problem, by the way. They could just come out and do a good press conference and straighten this stuff out. Just be like, hey, look, this is what we got. We blew it. We overhyped this thing. It wasn't there. It shouldn't have been talked about in the campaign, because when we finally got in and held the levers of power, we can see that we don't have it. Or they could be like, look, we can't talk about some of this stuff because these are some ongoing operations, and we may have some prosecutions that are going to be infringed on, or whatever the answer is, and we don't know it. Again, the spectrum exists where it's like the government covered up elite pedophiles who got to abuse children and did so with the knowledge of our government, and they were okay with it. And then the alternative is like there was very little there, but it was accidentally hyped up for a long time. And the people that are in office right now, like Patel and Bongino and Bondi, have been saying things that are not true. So they got to just eat that. One of those things is true. Somewhere in between that spectrum is accurate. The Trump administration is in a real spot right now because they want to go and do something so that we think about what's happening right now and we forget about what happened the last couple weeks. But what we ought to remember is the last couple years have really set us up to not trust government. We're all hypercritical right now. When I was sitting on with Owen Schroyer yesterday, he said, I have this allergy to propaganda. What he's saying is he can smell bullshit coming from a long ways away. And I think many of you are now more tuned to it than you've ever been before. Some of you were there already. It actually helps to have more people sniff it out and go, because listen, you ever walk in somewhere and you're like, hey, this milk smells bad. It smells like it's soured. What's the first thing you do when you have sour milk? You find your spouse or someone in your house and you go, does this smell bad to you too? Like, am I just smelling this, or is this legitimately bad? It helps to have someone else see it. Like, nobody wants to be the crazy person that's the only person. That's the biggest sin for the so-called MAGA people. If you're a conservative person, or if you're somebody who generally distrusts government, you could actually be on the left now, for it doesn't matter. If you generally distrust narratives and the way that things are presented to you, the worst sin you can have is seeing it too soon, because then you're crazy. You're not crazy if you say, didn't Donald Trump just say a second ago that we've got crime under control, that we almost solved murder as an idea? The concept of murder was almost solved in America. I swear to God, I heard Dan Bongino say that. On my hand to God, I know he said that. We are solving murder in America. Or they're just not reporting it. Only one of those things can be true. You can't have actually solved murder and then tell me that you need to put federal troops out. And again, I told you, we already tried this experiment. We did this in 2020. We put a bunch of FBI agents and DEA agents and ATF and U.S. Marshals. We walked around. We put a bunch of National Guardsmen out in Washington, D.C. It didn't make it better. They just stayed in the places that don't suck. I'll show you where they didn't go, because that's where I used to work. Here's Donald Trump talking on both sides. One of these is today, one of those, or yesterday rather, and one of them is May 7th. That's not that long ago. Like, we actually can remember that.
Our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drugged out maniacs and homeless people. And we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it. No, Eddie's very talented. Crime is down in Washington, D.C. Street crime, violent crime by 25%. And people have seen, they've noticed a big difference.
And the murder rates are plummeting. We are now able to report that the murder rate is on track to be the lowest in U.S. history, in modern recorded U.S. history, thanks to this team behind me and President Trump's priorities.
Okay, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I think that it is a chronic situation that Washington, D.C. is not nice. I went out looking for the story because in probably like 2019 or 2020, I participated in the arrest of a Washington, D.C. employee. He was a Washington, D.C., what's called DCRA employee. That's one of their consumer something or other protections. I don't know, one of the nanny state pieces they have. And he was a previously convicted second-degree murderer. And he worked in a shirt and a tie and slacks and shoes. Black dude who lived down in Maryland. We followed him in from Maryland into Washington, D.C., working for the city government, and he was arrested for the murder of another person because he was selling fentanyl. Okay? So that happened. And I was like, oh, I bet I can find that story. Like, it was a pretty big deal press release. He was also getting his drugs from a first-degree murderer who also had been let free. So 2 murderers were selling drugs that resulted in the death of another person in Virginia. And I couldn't find that story. It's like buried in there somewhere. But I found this story. A jury found D.C. employee guilty of manslaughter after the deadly shooting of a 13-year-old. These things are ubiquitous. They're all over the place. Like, how many people in your city government? I should look up how many people are in Washington, D.C. I'm going to do that right now. How many people work in your city government have been convicted of murder of any kind? First degree, second degree, like third degree manslaughter, homicide, whatever. Can anyone, like, is that a familiar story to you? There's 700,000 people that live in Washington, D.C., if you believe the interweb. That means that it's slightly bigger than Boston, slightly bigger than Baltimore. It's smaller than a bunch of cities that I'm in. I don't know anybody in city government that's in Austin, that's in Dallas, that's in Houston, in San Antonio. I can't think of another city where I found out that city employees were guilty of shooting and killing people. But it just tells you who they hire. They hire people that are like predisposed towards killing people. That's pretty bad. They find people that are violent, dangerous. And so he was talking about it in that clip. Donald Trump was saying, hey, Eddie did a good job. He's talking about Ed Martin, who was the former acting United States attorney in Washington, D.C. Here's the current United States attorney for D.C. She's talking real tough. Like, she's not wrong. It's just not an acute emergency. This is an ongoing, decades-long problem.
I see too much violent crime being committed by young punks who think that they can get together in gangs and crews and beat the hell out of you or anyone else. They don't care where they are. They can be in DuPont Circle, but they know that we can't touch them. Why? Because the laws are weak. I can't touch you if you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old and you have a gun. I convict someone of shooting another person with an illegal gun on a public bus in the chest. Intent to kill? I convict him. And you know what the judge gives him? Probation. Says you should go to college. We need to go after the D.C. Council and their absurd laws. We need to get rid of this concept of, no cash bail. We need to recognize that the people who matter are the law-abiding citizens. And it starts today. But it's not going to end today, because the president is going to do everything we need to do to make sure that these emboldened criminals understand we see you, we're watching you, and we're going to change the law to catch you.
Okay, but that's not the executive's job. I don't know if they're just preying on the fact that most Americans know very, very little about how our Constitution structures our government. Maybe that's the big problem. I don't know if it's just because that sounds tough, like even though she's like very, very small, and she's out there tough talking. You can't tell me that you're going to go change the law when you're not the person. Like, they want the law the way that they want it. I actually have a clip from Jesse Kelly, who says this properly. I disagree with the conclusion that you need to federalize troops and bring a bunch of people in. By the way, you've got unprecedented takeover of Washington, D.C. comes in as police are showing that crime is down. The figures say, yeah, like D.C. doesn't properly report criminal stats. The question of legality of bringing in the National Guard in Los Angeles is now argued in federal court. They already got one win, so they're going to keep fighting this nonsense. It's already over. This is the thing, whether you had people burning. You remember, like, Los Angeles had, like, massive riots over ICE? Got another story about that at the end of the day today. But, like, don't tell me that these people don't want this. This is what the people wanted. How do I know? Because they vote for it. Over and over again. They vote in the city councils that go after it. They go out there and their policies favor it. They make apologies. And overwhelmingly, this is suicidal empathy. It's a bunch of people who have enough money to feel guilty about themselves, so they think that we're the moral good people by making the stupidest possible arguments, that letting people live on the street is somehow compassionate. Newsflash, I've worked with the homeless. I was in emergency medicine. There's nothing compassionate about letting people live on the street in mental illness and wallow in it. I used to work in D.C. for 5 years. I drove into the federal buildings that were surrounded by homeless people. The federal court structure is surrounded. Like, the building itself has homeless encampments on the outside walls of it. And you could probably get away with shooting someone as a teenager or as like a random black person in there, because that's the people that were overwhelmingly involved in the crimes that I was seeing in Washington, D.C. more easily than if you were a federal agent. If you were a federal agent, you are going to get arrested. And we proved that. We proved it in 2020. There was a headquarters supervisor from the FBI. He ended up getting rolled up because apparently he was also running like some illegal tattoo parlor and then groping and sexually assaulting women. So that's amazing. That's the kind of people that they're hiring. Thank God I don't work there anymore, right? I had that moment this morning where I looked at the studio and I was like, this studio and getting canceled from the FBI actually saved me from working with a bunch of people who are cowards and like some creeps. But don't tell me these people don't want this. Don't tell me that that's not what was requested by the folks that live there. And it's not an emergency. Here's Jesse Kelly explaining to you that this is what they like.
Please stop using the term soft on crime. They're not soft on crime. They want people murdered. They want you robbed. They want you assaulted. They want you murdered. They want your daughter raped. They're not soft on crime. They're pro-crime. Democrats have done this to America's cities on purpose. And this brings me to what Donald Trump did. He had to. He had no choice. This is where we're at now, a terrible set of circumstances. We now have to have Big Daddy government step in to stop innocent people from being murdered. I didn't want it to be this way. I assume that's not what you want, but this is what happens when you allow the communists to take over our cities and they turn the jails loose. Eventually, somebody with a heavy hand is going to have to step in.
I don't agree with that part. That's the problem. The problem is trying to act like there's a uniparty in Washington, D.C., that they're like all the same, like there's two different wings of the same bat, right? Because I don't like bird because it's grosser than that. You can't act like these are separate entities when you also make the argument that they're all the same entity. You can't tell me that the solution is Big Daddy government because it's run by Donald Trump, when Donald Trump turns around and endorses Lindsey Graham and says Lindsey Graham is great and he's always been a great friend to us and he's a great man to represent South Carolina. Ugh. I'm going to advertise for someone real quick. We're going to talk about the folks over at Mad Hat Jerky, and then we're going to play you a little bit more of that, because you can have the right idea and still come up with the wrong answer. And I'm going to play you something out of Texas that I think that establishes that these people are all in the same group and you should just dislike them. What you don't have to dislike is a quality snack. Yeah. So one of the things I've been trying to do of late is not eat junk food at all. And I have, I'm the king. I would live on brownies and fudge if that was an option. That's not a great thing. If you guys want to go and live on something that's a little bit more nutrient rich, calorie dense with a lot of nutritional value and more importantly, some protein, easy to carry around with you, doesn't go bad, not over a long period of time. MattHatJerky.com/KYLE. It's MATTHAT jerky.com/Kyle. You should save 20% off by using my name at checkout. They have a great product. It tastes really good. The ones I like are the roasted garlic. I like the original as well. Guys, get the USDA Prime, just step up. It's like $1 more for the bag. I get the huge bags. I get like whatever the 12 ounces are, which is probably multiple pounds of dehydrated meat. Sometimes it's the only protein that my kids will eat. They all get really excited about it. Actually, what I have to do is order more than one bag for myself, because then I'll only get one because my kiddos will eat it. So if you are a grandparent or a parent and you're trying to figure out like, hey, what's some easy nutritional snacks that I can hold on to? That's one you can do. MattHatJerky.com/KYLE. Link will be below in the show description so you guys can see that. Let's talk about this compassionate problem. There is like a real problem with it. And of course, what happens is the left turns around and freaks out. They major in the minor. They're going to act like this is somehow meanness. This is coming from CBS. I'm sorry, this is ABC News. Trump's remarks on homelessness, where he actually said the homeless will have to move out immediately. So they took that and they just said, well, that's because this is a real problem. We're going to be mean to homeless people now. No, you have no right to live on people's steps or in the public walkways or in the middle of traffic, which is where I would often see these people. You have no right to live on the freaking island in the middle of a damn freeway system, which is what is happening all the time in Washington, D.C. If there is a place that is fenced off, if there is a piece of ground that is non-concrete, and sometimes when it is concrete, what you're seeing there is a church that's on New York Avenue in Washington, D.C. And there's a homeless encampment, which is to say a bunch of people pitch tents in places that they don't actually own and they have no right to be in. And they're blocking the right of way of people walking, and they're stinking, and they're freezing to death, and they're doing drugs, and they're just hanging out there waiting for, like, I don't know, they're just deterring human beings from doing normal stuff because nobody's going to walk there with their kids. I mean, it's frustrating. The funny thing is when Trump says something about, like, what's wrong with DC, I don't actually disagree with his assessment. But my answer is don't go there and outsource all of the things that happen in Washington, D.C. back to the states. D.C. has proven that it sucks. It's not America, is my argument to you. It doesn't look like America. It doesn't sound like America. When you look around out there, it doesn't operate like America. And what do I call America? Florida, Mississippi, both Carolinas, most of Virginia, except northern parts, right? Texas, Indiana, Montana. Like, there's different versions of what America looks like. But generally speaking, it's not like what happens in New York City, what happens in Philadelphia. It's not what happens in a chunk of California. Actually, if you drive through, like, most of the parts of California, you're like, oh, it's just like suburban homes and beautiful landscapes and lots of rolling mountains. That's nice. That's pretty nice. It's too bad that they have communistic laws, as Jesse Kelly and I would agree on. Trump is saying, if it's ugly, you don't go into a restaurant. If it's dirty, you don't eat there. Like, yeah, so let's not serve up whatever DC has. Let's try to send it back to where the states are. There's a big problem with that, but at least it's small enough that we can probably try to bite it off. You're not going to be able to solve this federal monster, and it's silly to think you can.
City, you know, my father always used to tell me, I had a wonderful father, very smart, and he used to say, son, when you walk into a restaurant and you see a dirty front door, don't go in, because if the front door is dirty, the kitchen's dirty also. Same thing with the Capitol. If our Capitol's dirty, our whole country is dirty, and they don't respect us. So it's a very good question, actually.
It's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. No, I mean, he's not wrong, right? You go into a thing, if you see a dirty floor in a restaurant, if you see roaches scurrying around in the front, you can tell the kitchen's going to be awful. I can tell you that. I used to work in restaurants a lot. That's 100% true. So don't do that. But I don't want the federal government to solve this. And this is not how you solve it. You don't solve it by putting on like a tourniquet, which is what the National Guard is. That's not a permanent solution. You have to fix the infrastructure. We already actually talk about this all the time. You fix the infrastructure behind it. And that takes a long time. And that's not going to be something you're going to do in a one administration. You've got Trump separated by Biden. Now he's trying to fix the problems of Biden a little bit, right? And this time around. I don't think he has the time to do this. And the National Guard is not going to fix it. It's not. Because this is the way they want it. Let me play you this from the Texas House. This is Brian Harrison, who we've played a couple times. He's like the only person that's running out there saying, this is all a charade. It's a charade at the national level and it's a charade at the state level. You can't tell me that these people didn't want it this way and that they don't agree on everything once they go out and get lunch together. They're real tough talk when they're on the House floors and they're out there, doing their speeches for C-SPAN, or they're doing their speeches for any of the big news media. And then they get out and they hang out. They all go to the Monocle Grill, and they all get a burger together.
The national media is lionizing the Texas House Speaker, but you're saying the people that won't, like, you can disagree with people about how they're going to vote on the maps, and if the Democrats want to show up and vote against the maps, fine. But you're telling me that the Republican Speaker of the House has part of the current absconded groups of Democrats in the leadership in the Texas legislature?
Yes. This is the biggest underreported scandal in America. Not only are some of the Democrat caucus in leadership, Matt, 60% of the House Democrat caucus were put in leadership, being given co-chairmanships, vice chairmanships, or actual chairmanships of powerful House committees. And you say, well, how could that be? Why is that? The Democrats are who elected this Republican speaker. I mean, you know a lot about dealing with speakers and speaker politics.
I do.
And imagine, though, if Kevin McCarthy had struck a deal with 30 or 40 or 50 members of the House Democrats to maintain and hold on to the speakership up there. That's what happened down here. Even though we have a big majority, our current so-called Republican speaker was the choice of the Democrat caucus.
Okay, you've convinced me. Nothing good is going to come out of the speaker.
It's really simple. On the back end, these guys are all backslapping and laughing at you. They go out and posture in the same way that I don't think people who are professional wrestlers really hate each other, even though they talk tough in the ring. They get the microphone, they get up in each other's faces. I'm going to come for you and you're going to feel the wrath. And then it's like, hey, are we doing a barbecue? Okay, let's go do the barbecue on Saturday. Yeah, see you there. Bring the kids. We know, we being the suspendables, know from the last time that they were up testifying. Matt Gaetz was talking to Democrats on how you can do a deal so that you write a book and then somebody else, it could be a Democrat, that doesn't matter, could buy all your books with their campaign funds. So now you've personally profited because your books are all sold. And then he uses his campaign funds and buys all your books. And then they just give them out to people, or they put them in a warehouse somewhere. Maybe they light them on fire and they have a big bonfire and they laugh at you while they jump around in their loincloths. I don't know. But this is an easy way to launder money from campaign funds to personal funds. And this is a known trick. Apparently, it's something that you tell people how it goes. Do you guys realize that? That the folks that are posturing and having some big fight, the Jasmine Crockett's versus the MTGs, like as likely as not, they go to the same nail salon and laugh about how funny that was and play each other the top clips. I can't say that they don't, because I don't know. I would believe they probably do stuff like that. Are there some real grievances? Maybe. But you don't get a uniparty and then act like one party is the solution. And I'm telling you, it's just not. It just doesn't work that way. And the media is egging it on. They're going to be controlled opposition to it. Again, do we think that federal troops in Washington, D.C. is a solution? The answer is right in front of you. And as one of you called it on social media today, Meat Team 6, that's maybe because there's a couple of meaty gals in there. No, Kneel Team 6 took a knee, and this happened in 2020, and today's FBI and Trump administration is very well aware of the negative PR it caused. Agents in the FBI despise this, and all they have to do is go forward and say, you have 72 hours of amnesty to come and self-report who you are. We want to see what happened after you took a knee and after you got a hug from Chris Wray and a $100 Applebee's gift card from the FBI Agents Association that has hired nothing but anti-Trump lawyers like Mark Zaid and Norm Eisen. Please step forward and self-identify so we know who you are and where you went. But why were they in the position to take a knee? Because you put people that don't do that job. The National Guard is not a peacekeeping force for Washington, D.C., and federal agents are not the right answer to that problem either. It's really clear. Unless you guys think that I don't know what I'm talking about Washington, D.C., this was brought up the other day. I just wanted to show this on the screen because this made me laugh. Someone said if you want to take Democrats and have them experience what the real Washington, D.C. is, go drop them off at the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X Avenue. All right. It's in Southeast DC. And that's where I used to go to have lunch, right there at the Arrow. That is arguably the blackest Popeyes in America. I was the only white person that went there as far as I could tell. And it was really fun, too, because they would scream at each other. Like everybody was screaming. There's people that are in the cars. They're screaming at the person that's taking the order. Person that's taking the order, screaming back at the person in the cars. They're having this like lights out fight right in front of me. They're having it behind me. When I got up there, I'd say, good afternoon, ma'am. And she would go like, oh, what's up, sugar? And they were all nice to me. And I had the funniest time there. It probably wasn't very clean, but I'm just telling you, if you look up, what is the old joke? I think it was like Chris Rock used to talk about. If you look up and you realize that you're on MLK Boulevard or MLK Avenue, like you're in a bad spot, I will tell you, nothing rivals that when you're at the cross section of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Straight up. And then you go to the Popeyes there, which you can see if you're just listening. What you can't see is that Martin Luther King is basically a north-south road. And Malcolm X is an east-west. And at the what is that? The southeast corner, right where this arrow is pointing, is where the Popeyes is. I used to go there a couple times a month because we used to do surveillance due south of that in some of the worst neighborhoods in America, open air drug markets, women that were peddling tricks on the side of the road, people that were passed out. You had homeless people, you had gangbangers, you had all the worst things that you could see, a bunch of military age males that were not working, all running around through the housing projects, all in Washington, D.C. So I've seen what it looks like in Washington, D.C. and why, like, you're not going to solve it by putting a couple of National Guards troops up on the National Mall. Like, federalize that, give the rest of it back to Maryland, and let it be whatever the hell it is, which is probably not very great. We'll say that. Let me give you an example, too, of what happens when you actually go and do what the federal government is able to do, which is go after the people that have violated federal laws. If you actually use the tools properly, and they started doing it with one big push in Los Angeles, it can actually have a real consequence. But you have to use the right tool for the right job. So let's think about what that tool is. Illegal immigration, people who do immigration and customs enforcement, right? So illegal immigration is the problem. We have a tool that is designed for it. It's called ICE, and ICE has a division, ERO, Enforcement and Removal Operations. That's the right answer, right? The FBI, wrong answer. National Guard, wrong answer. That's not how you handle street crime. FBI, complex investigation. If everybody was like doing complex fraud in Washington, D.C., which they probably are, then you could have them do that. You could do just public corruption. That would be cool. I don't think they would get a budget after that, though. They would have no budget. Use the right tool for the right job. I'm going to take one break right here at this moment. We're going to, I'm giving you the warning for those of you listening on the audio. You're about to hear a canned ad that comes in from Spotify. So we appreciate that. We'll take a quick break. And there it is. Okay. So let's do this fun little article that I saw. And this one does come from CBS, and it does make me kind of laugh. And it leads with fear of immigration raids. Are you ready? Boom. Look at that street. That street looks lovely. That is the kind of street I want to go shop on. I don't want to go to streets that are busy and full of people. I don't care if it's Utes or just a bunch of suburban moms on the street. I like empty streets. I want to be able to rollerblade and play hockey on a street. Not that I do either of those things anymore. But this is what I want, and this is what they're against. Again, I think Jesse Kelly is correct. They want the things that they get. Huntington Park, California is a working class community. More than 50,000 people has recently felt like it has a bullseye on its back because of ramped up raids by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. The town is 95.6% Latino, and as many, are you ready for this? As many as 45% of the residents are undocumented, aka in the United States illegally. Almost half your population is here illegally? What on earth are you doing? I heard something say the other day that 2.7 million illegal aliens live in California alone. That's bigger than 22 states' populations, or it's right on the edge of it. Like, more illegal aliens live in California than people live in Oklahoma, America. That's crazy. And there's obviously some implications if you do the census, which is why Trump is talking about this. That is the right answer. Like, fix the machine behind it. Go get a good count. Go figure out what the hell you have for population and whether or not those people should actually be represented. The argument that, we have people, and even if they're not supposed to be here legally, they still need to be represented. Piss off. You're a crazy person, right? It's the same people. Look, you got options. You can live in a place that is actually enforcing federal law with the tool for federal law and have people not show up anywhere and it empties out. We're a target for ICE because we know that they are stereotyping and racially profiling us, and they're targeting folks that look like me. Bro, if the people that look like you, this is City Council member Jonathan Sanabria, if the people who look like you have a 1 in 2 chance of being there illegally, yeah, they should target people who look like you. That's a really good guess. Those are like more than betting odds in a casino. That's better odds than you will get at a craps table or at any hand of poker. 50% win before the freaking cards come out. Yeah, grab every person that looks Latino because you got a 1 in 2 chance at grabbing the right guy. That seems like a no-brainer. This guy walked through Pacific Boulevard, the city's main commercial thoroughfare. It was a once vibrant city center that was eerily quiet. Love it. If you have built your entire city on people that are not allowed to be in this nation, that means the people that are working there are already felons. The people that are hiring them are also felons, according to federal law. Go look at Title VIII. This is not a non-criminal offense. You are now in violation. If you were earning a living in the United States and you are an illegal alien, you've broken the law. So get the hell out. And that's the right tool. The right tool is ICE. The downside of this is that the Trump administration, for all of its ideas about doing mass immigration or mass deportations, which I'm behind, by the way, like, kudos to where you can do it right. Yes, do that. Problem is they didn't build the infrastructure on the back end. So I've got friends that are former agents and retired agents that are going to look and they're like, hey, $50,000 bonus, and you're going to hire me on to come where I live to go deport illegal people? I'm in. Some of you might be thinking about that. You're like, shoot, I could be a federal agent. The problem is you're not going to get to do that job. if you are lapsed in your academy time, and I think it's usually 2 years for federal agents, if you're not currently or within the 2-year window, an 1801 or an 1811 federal agent, if you're not able to go out and do that job, you're going to be sitting at a desk, which is something I've done in a federal office. You're going to sit at a desk and do nothing until they can find an academy class for you. And they're going to pay you a bunch of money. So again, that's more like churning your wheels. That's more like they didn't actually think of how to implement this stuff. This is good idea, bad execution. This is tons of horsepower, but no transmission. It doesn't actually translate into it. Now, the fear of it working, I'm okay with that, but that just means these people are hiding. I want real self-deportation numbers. I want bounties. Like, do it the right way. There's a way to get this stuff done, whatever it's worth. And it's not federalizing stuff. And in the meantime, the alternative is this. The alternative is that you get, like, there are way worse places than Washington, D.C. to clean up. Again, this is a chronic problem. Here's Memphis. I saw this video and I just wanted to show it because there's so much gunfire. This is a suburban freaking neighborhood. So we had 3 people shot at a Target just south of me in Austin yesterday from some dude who was a white guy, for whatever it's worth. He was wearing a Hawaiian shirt and he tried to carjack some people and he killed 3 people and he had like 9 arrests over the last 10 years. They go back to like 2011, maybe it was 15 years. He had a bunch of arrests and some of them were DUI, so that's reckless and dangerous to the general population. Some of them were for weed. That's usually not that dangerous, but it's still whatever. There was some family violence stuff. This was escalating into violent history, and they were all let out. So you also have to build a mechanism on the back end that keeps these people put away. And then you got this story. This, like I said, this is a totally different area. But there's something that Memphis and Austin have in common. They don't like punishing crime. It's by design. Again, that Jesse Kelly thing is right. That doesn't mean you should send in the National Guard. You should probably realize that not all America is great. Not all parts are the same. Not all people are equal as far as their ability to follow the law. And if you actually make them follow it, then you're probably going to get closer to law-abiding behaviors. Like, you enforce the damn law and then people don't show up on the streets of, what is it called? Huntington Beach? Huntington Park. Sorry, not Huntington Beach. All right. Here's a wild shootout in Memphis, just for fun.
Yeah, for those of you familiar with the area, this is not too far from Georgian Hills Park. Innovation Church is not far from where I stand this morning. Keep in mind, this is a residential area. You can see in that video, it's hard to determine which direction these shots were coming from. There were so many, but it appears you see someone standing outside that vehicle. Again, it's hard to tell whether that is the shooter or the victim. That car, it starts to bag up. It appears the passenger door is open while the car is backing up. It looks like the person who had been standing outside that vehicle is somehow able to hold on to it as it's backing back. As we understand it right now,
this guy is like struggling to articulate what the hell is going on. Yeah, it's kind of a wild video. It's caught from surveillance cameras. That's a lot of shooting. That's not like someone came up and did a couple of shots and then ran off. That's like a protracted gun battle. There's a reload involved in there somewhere, I think. So this is the dumbest possible thing. You have to go to the root of the problem, and that's going to be solved locally. It's not going to be solved by the federal government coming into DC. It's not. They already have a police force. The problem is that the DC police force, as far as I can tell, based on everything that I dealt with, is corrupted. It's inefficient. They actually vote for that to be the way that it is, the people that are the residents there. And a lot of it is this suicidal empathy, because you have people there that work in government, that trust government. They believe that that's the way it's supposed to be. And they just never go to that place that I used to go and have lunch at in Southeast. So as long as it doesn't come into my neighborhood, it's not a problem. The problem is intermittently, it will spill into your neighborhood. And even if the numbers are down right now, it is a chronic, long-term, 1992 and before, Joe Biden noticed problem in Washington, D.C. National Guard's not going to be the right tool. Again, use the right tool. I'm all for it. Fix the problem that exists in Washington, D.C. and the D.C. Metro PD, which is like ridiculously corrupted and always has been. But is the media pushing that? No, they're going to dunk on Trump, which they did, saying that he said the wrong things just a couple of days ago. And he did. So that's fair. And they're also going to ask questions that are completely illogical. Like, do you want to deport babies? All of this stuff does come from the same sort of suicidal empathy. I'm going to tie this into Pete Hegseth in the end. And I don't know if it makes sense to you, but it makes sense in my brain. So I'm going to share it with you. First, let's hear Pam Bondi, who's not my favorite, answering a question. and touting their record going after gang members, which they've been calling terrorists. By the way, they're juking the stats again. They did it under Biden, going after quote unquote domestic terrorists. That was all you, J6ers, anti-government, anti-authority, violent extremists. Again, we started this talking about January 6th and the inauguration that happened in January 2021. That's what the Biden administration was holding up as the boogeyman. The Trump administration is doing the same thing about terrorism, but they're calling them like gangbangers and cartel members terrorists. They're closer, but if you want to prove it to me, go into Mexico and go after where they are. And then also you're probably going to have to fix the fentanyl problem in the United States because there's an awful lot of people on the supply side that are putting it in here, but there's a huge demand side problem in the United States. They want the product. Why is that? Maybe we work on that too. Here's Pam Bondi talking about how they solve the problems.
If you have an undocumented baby, would that baby then be an enforcement priority?
The violent criminals in our country are the priority now. Let me put it in perspective. Today marked the 2,711th arrest in our country of TDA members, just TDA. Everyone in this room agrees they are one of the most violent criminal organizations in the world. And the Biden administration let them walk into our country for the last 4 years. 2,711 of them today have been arrested in our country. That is the priority of Donald Trump. That is the priority of this country, of Homeland Security, of all of our lawyers, of FBI. That's the priority.
Okay. Do you ever listen to her talk and just realize that she's really not good at this? And that is the huh, and the huh, and the huh, and the huh. You're spitting numbers. This is like Joe Biden style numbers for whatever it's worth. Like I hate listening to government people spout like nonsensical, useless statistics. We've already proven that most of these statistics are garbage. And they almost always come out that they're inaccurate. 2,711 known gang members, the most violent ones in the world. No, here's the problem. The media is asking, is a baby an enforcement priority? That's retarded. And she goes out there and tries to pivot and talk about, we're arresting gang members. How about if you're in the United States and you're here illegally and we uncover you in an immigration-related raid with the tool and the people who are trained to recognize that problem and have the authority to enforce it show up, and you make yourself a target of opportunity, then we're going to deport you too. And we don't care how old you are. We'll take your mom. We'll take you. We'll take the babies. We'll take everybody. You don't belong in this country. You are a burden that was not opted into. The American public does not have an obligation to you. We have laws. We're going to enforce them. There's going to be no leniency, period. The end. We're not going to go looking for babies, but if we find them, we're deporting them too. The end. Oh, but the problem is we have all these folks that are like this suicidal empathy, and they prey on this. And this is the argument here that I'm going to make with this Pete Hegseth piece. Are you ready? This is legitimately one of the articles that is leading on MSNBC. So it's always good to go see what MSNBC has to say. Pete Hegseth has amplified pastors with a message. Women shouldn't be allowed to vote. Oh, God forbid he say something that actually has some real biblical sustenance. And more important, God forbid we talk about something that for, like a good chunk of this American history has been the case. Yeah, we had some amendments that changed this country, and they happened before women had the right to vote. But they were kind of getting a little agitated at that time. During an expletive-laden address at the Army War College, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth boasted, "We are laser-focused on our mission of war fighting." And the former Fox News host did not, however, specify exactly which war he's eager to win. This comes from beta males who don't understand that the preparation for war is the way that you assure peace. This is a very ancient concept. If your army is prepared, if your troops are sharp, if you sweat in peacetime, then you bleed less in war. This is like a maxim that is put out by every single member of the armed forces when you go in. I used to have a poster that was up on my wall, and it said, "Oversee right now, in a country that we have not yet declared war on, there is a man that wakes up every day thinking about a way to kill you, and he's training, and he's doing it hard. And every day that you slack off, you're giving him a more opportunity to come after you. Train like your life depends on it." It's just an easy way to remember this stuff. Right? If you want peace, you prepare for war. Which war? It doesn't matter which war. The idea of war is what you prepare for. Of course, MSNBC is upset with that. In recent months, he's also invested a considerable amount of time and energy in library books. He's been scrubbing the Department of Defense websites of articles and images about Jackie Robinson and the Navajo Code Talkers. This is a claim like Pete Hegseth is doing this individually. I doubt it. I mean, I know for a fact he's not. How about that? He's been renaming military bases. No. He's been naming them what they've been named forever because these idiots in the last 4 years tried to whitewash American history. Just leave them. Nobody knows who the general is that they named Fort Hood after. They don't know. They don't know who Benning was. They don't nobody knows this stuff. Like, go ask a 17 or a 19-year-old Joe. Go ask somebody in the 101st Airborne. Hey, what is this base named after? What's the history of that name? Shut the hell up. They don't know. They're just trying to go to a strip club tonight. They're going to go try and buy a Ford Mustang at 19% interest. Like, they don't know anything. It's not, and they don't need to. That's not what their job is. Their job is not to be historians of the name of the base that they are stationed on. Their job is to go do their freaking job, which is prepare for war, to become better war fighters, which is exactly what he's talking about. Anyway, they've renamed Navy ships. No, they renamed ships that were named stupidly after like pedophilic homosexual icons. All right. Restoring racist monuments. This is such a good article. You guys, I'll put this up front over on kyleserafin.com so you guys can read it. And leading a Christian prayer service in the Pentagon's auditorium. We have freedom of religion, not freedom from religion. Go figure. The beleaguered Pentagon chief. He's beleaguered only because MSNBC believes that he is, but not based on any evidence that he's going anywhere, right? They're focusing on all these things. And one of the things they were able to determine is that he commented on an almost 7-minute long report that CNN did talking about Doug Wilson, whose picture's on the screen next to me. I don't know anything about him. Co-founder of the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches, or CREC. And he advocates the repeal of women's right to vote from the Constitution, which, by the way, was an amendment. It wasn't in the original Constitution. It was a change. And I would make the argument, broadly speaking, that having too many voters and more people being able to vote is in fact the problem. We don't need more voters. We don't need to have direct representation of senators. We don't need the federal government to pull an income tax. Like, all of these things are problematic to me. If we went back to 1913, we went back to 1908, we went back to 1905, take your pick, roll it back, somewhere around the turn of the century, you'd find that our system probably works better today. And like, most people don't know what they're doing when they're voting anyway. How many of you have an educated view of every single person? I'll tell you, I don't. I know that I don't know every single person on the ballot. So I'm like, crap, I wish I had done more research beforehand. Most of you probably feel the same way. You're not going to be unrepresented if we did this. Now, is this a real possibility? No, it's not, because people don't want to lose their right to vote, which, even if they don't use it properly, even if they don't know anything about what they're voting on, I at least know enough to like stay home when I don't know anything, which actually happens. I'm just like, oh, I blew it. I didn't spend any time getting to know what these candidates are about. I'm not a good voter. Unfortunately, like, dummies also vote. Let me show you what happens when you do let this happen. Eventually, we're going to end up here. This is my guess. This is Kyle's prognostication. This is in Surrey, in England. This is what happens when you get men and women to have suicidal empathy, and they move forward, and you have a mainstream press that is demonizing a guy that's saying he likes a pastor, and the pastor happens to espouse this biblical idea that men should lead, which I do think is right. And there's plenty of examples of this. We don't need to adjudicate it today. Here's an example of men not leading. And so this is the alternative. I'll hold out to you that the UK is what happens when women lead, including like a queen instead of a king. You get female cops that are going after catcallers.
These women aren't friends out for a run. They're actually undercover police officers taking to the streets in Surrey as part of a new operation trying to stop people catcalling and harassing female runners.
We get honked at, the staring, the hanging out of the window just to look at us, and it's so prevalent.
And police teams are ready to intervene the moment the officers are beeped at, followed or shouted at, pulling people over.
Those kind of behaviours may not be criminal offences in themselves, but they still need to be addressed. And of course, the people that are likely to commit those kind of behaviours, they may then go on to commit more serious offences or more serious behaviours.
Yikes, that guy said that out loud.
Già troppa frociaggine.
It's so much frociaggine. What the hell? Oh, we're going to go out and do pre-crime and stop men from heckling or yelling at women. By the way, right after this happens and after they do a really good job enforcing it, women are going to be like, how come nobody will catcall me anymore? How come I can't get a date? That video went viral when I was out on Timcast the other day. I'm just saying, suicidal empathy is a problem. Using the right tool for the right thing, including like using the right type of people to do the right type of leadership, is a big thing. You got to fix the infrastructure if you want to see it work. You can't use a screwdriver as a hammer. I've done it. All of you probably have done it too. How many times have you taken a screwdriver and you're like, I don't want to go get a hammer. Dunk, 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 dunk. And you slam something into the wall. Yeah, you could do that. It's not good. It's not the way you do things. And you certainly shouldn't make it at the national level. You don't want to do that. All right. That's what I got for today. that's Kyle's upsetting piece there. And God forbid you catcall anybody in Surrey. You thought it was just a couple of cute gals out for a run and you wanted to yell something outside your window. My brother used to do this, by the way. He would yell, hey, thickness. I don't know if that's a good thing to do. Hey, thickness is an interesting hitting online for women who are doing fitness. That's it for today. I'm going to give you a palate cleanse in a second. I'll just remind you, you guys can subscribe over on Rumble, on YouTube, on X. We appreciate all that. If you want to be a financial supporter of the show, you can go to Locals. It's KyleSerafin.com. You can be a free member there as well. You can also just look and see the open post. We'll show you all of the articles so you can read them for yourself. You can get a big kick out of the Code Talker deletion and the very, very bad defense secretary that we have at this moment. Follow us wherever you're at. Make sure you like it. Make sure you leave us a comment if you are so inclined. I will respond to them. For all of you ladies that are really mad that you're going to lose your right to vote, I don't think it's happening, but probably would be better for America. Just saying. Okay, here it is. Let's see. A palate cleanse for the moment. Let's do something about, I don't know, the patriarchy and white supremacy and all that stuff.
All right, a day in the life of a white neo-colonialist committing gentrification in Latin America. We start the day with a high-protein breakfast because this has been shown to be linked to white supremacy. And I get started my day by listening to one of my favorite inspirational speakers. And then I walk around asking people if they speak English.
Do you speak English? Speak English. Do you speak English?
I just do this to remind them that, they should learn English.
I get a flat white. Flat white.
And I go to an overpriced cafe/co-working space and do some remote work, which allows me to commit economic arbitrage on the local economy. And then I will talk to some of the local indigenous women, and my pickup line is essentially just offering them green cards in exchange for companionship. They never actually end up getting the green cards though. And then lastly, I will hit the gym, and today is shoulders, so I will do front raises, and I will do 14 pounds for 88. All right, day in the life.
That guy's a good troll. All he's saying is go out there, speak English to people who may or may not speak English because this is America. Eat meat, all those things, and then lift heavy things in the gym. Not 14-pound raises for 88 times. That seems kind of strange. All right. God bless all of you. Thanks for listening. I hope you had some fun with it. Obviously, some of this stuff is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It has to be. We have to laugh a little bit. Otherwise, we'll all go insane. I look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow, 0930 Eastern time for the Kyle Serafin Show. And have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Serafin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Serafin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Serafin.